Yeah, hey, hey there, YouTube. How you doing? Somehow this got through the censors, so you actually get to see some news about China. We're covering China right now, so let's go ahead and jump in. The mortality is low if you're vaccinated properly, and the problem is in China, they're using a vaccine that is not up to snuff. So this is unfortunately this is not correct. This is not correct in the Chinese context. It's correct in the Western context because of, you know, our big fancy pharmaceutical companies, but China refuses to take those medicines. It's whipping up its own from, you know, from probably from information that they stole from the private sector. Let's be real. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being here.
是非常正确的。那么实际上，我周围的朋友们就说，他们觉得就是说，开放以后，日常还要做好防护，然后家里呢就是备一些药品。如果感觉到有一些症状呢，实际上他们愿意在家就是自己隔离。
Yeah, no, I would be hiding all my symptoms. I'd be terrified to go out in the public if I had a runny nose.
那么就是把这些治疗的机会
Oh,
让
it's
给
terrible,
一
Lenny.
些重病的老人呀、孩子啊。 或者症状比较
It's just meth.
其实大家现在还是接受的，而且我觉得大家并没有。
I love those vaccines.
加油！上海加油！上海放人！上海放人！团结开到明天。不要疯狂，要自由！不要疯狂，要自由！不要疯狂，要自由！
It's like I mentioned before, the government's finally recognized or realized that people or those voices from people, so they had to do something. Otherwise, maybe I don't know. Maybe the product is gonna be upgrades, and all the cities. I mean, all over China are gonna products again, and the people are gonna maybe fight it for that.
So the lesson, unfortunately, the lesson that they learned is that they just need to crack down smarter. You know, that's what they've learned here. It is a victory for the Chinese people who are demanding sanity, but I mean, do we honestly believe that the government is going to take a 180? Is going to take the L? The Chinese government's going to take the L? They can't even, you know, they don't even believe numbers are real. You know, they look at the numbers of their financial market and they go, no, they're this. So it's, you know. Wow, 15 years old in China, huh? What are they studying out there, Lenny?
没必要担忧啊，这个东西，这个病毒是始终存在的。那应该要相信那个科学或者医学，它至少那。
See, that's this mentality, this defeat the virus mentality is kind of the core of the issue here. Unfortunately, there's no defeating COVID. It'll likely be with us for the rest of our lives. I mean, you know, if we keep up a program, maybe it will, you know, because the hope is that eventually it will stop mutating to make itself better, and it might mutate to make itself worse. And then, you know, but if we don't keep the measures up, if we don't keep masking, we don't keep vaccinating, you know, COVID could come back and, you know, really hurt. It's still hurting. It's still hurting us. Let's not get it twisted. There's reports I saw just last week about children actually being affected more than average, and respiratory diseases going up. So this idea that we're going to defeat COVID is kind of wrong. It really should be like it's a struggle against COVID. Like every year it's a struggle against the flu, and every year it's a struggle against, you know, the common cold. and to the people that are like, oh man, vaccines are like really scary. I mean, I don't understand this mentality. We were all cool with flu vaccines. Every year, oh, get your flu vaccine. Oh, you better get your flu vaccine. Yeah, there's a new one. Yep, there's a new one. This was all like common stuff. But now with COVID, with all the gaslighting, all the conservative gaslighting on COVID, and now, because I feel my own trepidation, like the gaslighting is working on me a little bit, and it's like I have, at the same time, I want to avoid statements like we should always trust the pharmaceutical companies, because that's a big no. That's a big no. But at the same time, it feels like they nailed it. It feels like they nailed it on this. Please give me the source. Please give me the source of the respected scientists that would disagree, and I would love to hear that person. But for everything that I've observed, the pharmaceutical companies kind of knocked it out of the park on this one. Which I hate to give them a dub on anything, because they're billion dollar nightmare machines. These pharmaceutical companies, they actively compromise our government. They lobby our government to compromise it every single year. They're disgusting corporations that deserve to be heavily regulated and motherfucking profit gouged. Clearly they know what they're doing. Clearly they understand what a virus is and how to prevent it from infecting your body.
还有一点呢，就是人与病毒应该是共存的。
对，我想民众都是比较乐意看到说政策的不断的在放宽，对，因为这样子减少对生活的影响。动态清零，我觉得可能不太现实吧。对，因为毕竟现在全世界都已经都开放了，那中国我觉得很难
There you go.
一直保持在一个封锁的状态，你迟早要跟别人去接触的，所以我觉得还是有必要适当的放宽。
Exactly. And once again, I got to point out that for a country that really gives a shit about its economy, like the China and its economy, they're very important things. Obviously, it's really interesting to see Xi Jinping sacrifice his economy to save face for a promise that no one would care if he went back on it. No one would care if Xi Jinping said, oh, the policy is this now, and we're going to live with COVID, and zero COVID. What's that? I strike that from the record. I've never even said that word. No one would care. You know what I mean? No one would trip. But he's like, nope, we're gonna be the best. We're gonna be on top. It's just like with the Putin situation, all this power centralized into a single person, kind of allows that single person to just affect tens of millions of people on a whim, on a feeling, on his ego, right? We're zero COVID. I made that promise. I made that claim, and we're number one. And the virus didn't come from here. And it's like no one would trip if you just went back on that, Lenny, I think you are the only person in the gym. Argument used the Chinese economic liberation would never lead to Chinese liberation, which the middle class is soon. Maybe that was right after all. Maybe. Yeah, maybe, Clutch Cargo. That once you get a middle class, you soon will get individualists that demand personal and political rights. I mean, if that's the case, Clutch Cargo, what you said here, for the for the YouTube audience, if that's the case, is it fair to say that China is not a communist country then? Oh, we got this new vaccine now or something. Yeah, it needs a route to climb down and save face. That's the thing. I mean, Putin's looking for a ramp to save face as well. We got that's the problem with these authoritarians. All this power is centralized into these individuals, and they expect the entire fucking world to bend around their feelings. Right. So now the geopolitical, discussion is how do we soothe Putin? How do we assist him in saving face? And now we have to worry. And the Chinese people have to worry about Xi Jinping saving face. Oh, he said zero COVID. He can't look stupid. He looks pretty fucking stupid destroying his economy, trying to fulfill a promise that no one believes is realistic, and nobody would trip if you just moved on from it. No, that doesn't look stupid because that doesn't exist, right? I've erased that reality from existence. The only reality is that China is on its way to defeating COVID, once and for all. This is a problem with dictators and authoritarians. This is a problem with dictators and authoritarians. But anyway, real quick, we got this exiled Hong Kong pro-democracy activist Nathan Law reacts to protests in China. I thought it would be good to get an opinion from a Chinese person about the situation because, look, here's the reality, folks. This is not a revolution, and I wish it was. And I wish this was a democratic, revolution sweeping across China. That is not the case. You could say that the crackdown has actually been successful from the government. So it's interesting to see them bend a little bit. That's part of the strategy of quelling this uprising. I've seen the U.S. do this before, where they'll make empty promises, or they'll promise, they'll give the protesters a bone in an attempt to kind of, quell everything. And, okay, maybe they're changing their minds. And then they, of course, a couple weeks later, just do a complete 180 on everything that they were promising. But let's hear from Nathan here and see what he's got to say.
Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Yuka Huaye, and here's what's coming up in this edition. China relaxes some of its stringent COVID restrictions following a rare outburst of public discontent across the country. We'll speak with exiled Hong Kong activist Nathan Law. The fight against another virus continues.
I'm curious if Nathan Law has any connection to the right-wing astroturfing that we saw in the Hong Kong pro-democracy movement, since he's, a person on TV. You never know, right? If there's a person representing a movement of some kind, there might be a reason.
4 decades after it was discovered, we'll look at how 2.4 million people are living with HIV in India today. And a Japanese court sends a strong signal to the country's lawmakers that not allowing same-sex marriage poses a serious threat to personal dignity.
Yeah, you might be right, DCH.
Could this be a turning point or just a blip? Cities across China have rolled back some COVID restrictions, requiring less testing and allowing people to isolate at home instead of in quarantine centres. While there's been no indication that the central government is ready to change its zero-COVID approach, there has been a marked change in their official language. The authorities have been careful not to send any signal, though, that the relaxing of rules were in any way a response to rare displays of public.
I mean, the reality is, and this is, this happens everywhere, but the reality is that if these people, that went out there, if they wanted to see the government really change something, they should all immediately get back out there with the same amount of ferocity. That's the only thing that works. If making some empty promises makes everyone go back in and just starts dealing with it again, well, what lesson does that teach the government,
Public discontent,
throw them a little rhetorical bone.
Going as far as demanding President Xi Jinping step down. Let's cross now to London to speak with Nathan Law,
Davey.
A Hong Kong pro-democracy activist who was a prominent student leader during the 2014 Umbrella movement and who went into exile just before the infamous national security law was imposed on the enclave in 2020. Nathan, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now,
So he got out of Hong Kong right before China passed a law that would have made it legal to arrest him without question and throw him in a dungeon. So not exactly a stupid move to get the hell out of there.
You've been observing the recent anti-COVID protests in China. Have you noticed a marked difference in the way people are voicing dissent compared to when activism in Hong Kong was crushed by Beijing?
This uprising is definitely the largest after the 1989 democratic movement and Tiananmen massacre. We've seen protesters spawned all over the country's dozens of cities, and their demands ranging from less strict COVID control to a more political ones, stepping down Xi Jinping, stepping down the Chinese Communist Party. There are some demands that share with Hong Kong protests, for example, a more open society, more accountability to the government. but it is also clear that many of these protesters in the country are focusing on the strict COVID control, and they want it to be less disturbing their lives.
Yeah, as you've just mentioned, some in the West have described the recent wave of protests as the biggest threat to China's Communist leaders since the 1989 Tiananmen Square uprising. Do you agree, though?
We need to assess whether China could manage and possibly disperse the whole protest through the normal means that they have. For example, deploying police to arrest the protesters, using their propaganda, shifting the blames to some other stakeholders like local governments and also the producers of COVID kits, etc. I don't think the current protest is up to a scale that it could shake the base of the legitimacy of the Chinese Communist Party, even though we've seen a breakthrough of how people are resisting, that their demands are really political now.
Well, that's an interesting question. Davey just asked me, my wife is Chinese, so what does she think about this? And, you know, my wife's family, I guess we'll do a little story time here, just a quick one. My wife's family immigrated to the United States when they were escaping the communist revolution in China. My wife's grandmother and her husband, you know, my wife's grandfather, they had all of their possessions confiscated, and they had to escape, basically, you know, swimming across a river to get to a safe area to leave communist China. So one could say that there's a lot of criticism of the authoritarian communist government, and, you know, it's kind of swung. It's interesting because it's kind of swung, you know, to the extreme on the other end, where you know, now my father-in-law, he's, you know, he's a conservative, you know, guy, very American, you know, very proud of his American citizenship, and but he's, you know, he speaks more fluent Chinese than he does English. But, you know, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, they, you know, very pro democracy, very pro United States, and, you know, they don't have any kind of allegiance to the Chinese government, and they see stuff like this, and they're like, yeah, I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I'm in America. So that's kind of the situation.
Some of them is indeed targeting Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party, but I just don't see the magnitude is massive enough to make a really great impact in terms of Beijing's governance and its legitimacy.
And in the age of social media, some people are using some creative means to protest, and others turned to dating apps to secretly communicate with each other. What does this all mean?
Living under a massive,
me too,
sophisticated surveillance and censorship country, Chinese people, they get used to use convoluted messages to express certain discontent or messages that are banned in the social platform or banned.
I mean, look at these clowns. Look at these clowns over here. Over here, like the Roman fucking legion.
Discontent or messages that are banned in the social platform or banned by the Chinese Communist Party. So using a blank paper itself is also a very subtle way of protesting. Someone was holding a flower, someone was using mathematical equations, and those dating apps, all these things are being deployed to circumvent, to avoid from being censored.
By the way, Apple Corporation had no problem, you know, was it Apple or Google had no problem assisting. Oh, it was Apple who, at the behest of the Chinese government, reduced the features, or I think maybe blocked it altogether, of Apple, is it Air Travel, Air Pass? It's like that DS. It's that old DS functionality, Street Pass. No, it wasn't Cell Signal, but it's the ability. You know what'll happen? AirDrop. That's what it's called. Apple has this function on your phone called AirDrop, where you can literally you put content that you broadcast to other iPhones, and anybody with an iPhone can just download it if they're in your vicinity. And you know, at the behest of the Chinese government, Apple, you know, killed that feature because it was being used by the protesters to, you you know, to move information around outside of the Chinese sensors. So, you know, we got a couple stories about Apple here. Just, you know, the usual greedy, money hoarding, piece of shit, fucking multi-billion-dollar company that would rather charge you $80 fucking for a power adapter than just give you a USB-C power adapter. You know, you literally have to pass a regulation to get Apple to make a power adapter, and they'll still charge you $80. They'll still charge. They'll have no problem charging $80 for a fucking generic ass USB-C charger with some glossy white plastic on it. Not a problem. People need to remember to turn it on every 10 minutes. Oh, you have to turn it on. I've never used it because I've only heard about people like giving out pictures of their dick, and I'm like, I'm not really interested in seeing pictures of other people's dicks. I don't, you know what I mean? But I actually don't know how it works.
So for now,
Animosa and Anosmia, welcome. I like your little avatar. It's cool, neon.
we definitely see a very creative way of protesting. The main purpose is to protect themselves from the tracking of the Beijing government and to express the message, even though not saying it, but everyone understands.
Now, in exchange for limited political freedoms, China as a nation enjoyed a strong economic growth, and President Xi Jinping has been pushing to reduce inequality under the Common Prosperity slogan. But what's the anger that's been bubbling underneath?
That tax social contract, which using freedom to trade with economic benefit, is now not going to convince any ordinary Chinese citizens. They've lived in lockdown for years. The economy is
US
going
and Canada
worse, and they have a really high rate of youth unemployment and many other issues in the society. So for now, using the term of having economic betterment, so that you guys to give up your rights and to give up your discontent, it is not working to these people, and that's why we've seen a waves of protests. Some of them are really political, but some of them, they are just trying to make a living. They're just trying to get rid of these COVID controls so that they could work, they could put food on the table. There have been a mix of demands and mix of incentive of why people are coming out. And I think that is the reason why there was a perfect storm of protesting. It's really, really shocking for anyone who been observing.
Big props to your boy, Lenny. Companet Garbage Fuel merch. Of course, I'm going to go ahead and give Lenny that Garbage Fuel Award in the morning, that early Garbage Fuel Award. Going to go to Lenny. And Osmia, I don't understand what you're, I don't know. Why do you care? Why the hell do you care? You're asking me too many personal questions. I'm starting to get uncomfortable. Sorry.
China politics, that it is control and surveillance technology are just so sophisticated that we thought these kind of protests would be possibly impossible. But definitely the discontent of people, the sharing pain that they experienced in the COVID pandemic, made these miracles happen.
Nathan Law joining us from London. Thank you so much once again for speaking with us.
Thank you.
4 decades after it was discovered, the fight against HIV.
I'm not fighting with motherfuckers on this shit, dude. People are combative about the weirdest fucking shit. Bye. I mean, I'm covering news. You're asking me fucking personal questions. What the fuck you want to know about me, man? I'm covering news, bitch. I gotta avoid that word. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry. Take it back. I don't know who you are, but you're really annoying.
AIDS continues across the world. In India, there are 2.4 million people living with the virus today, according to government data.
I think you're right. It's probably 4 million in the negative.
The pace of infections has significantly slowed down since the epidemic's peak in 2000, but health experts call for more adequate testing methods. Our team on the ground has sent.
I need to control myself, Zio.
He's one of the most prominent AIDS activists in India. For 2 decades, HIV-positive Loon Gante has been campaigning for access to antiretrovirals for all infected people in the country. These tablets prevent the virus from multiplying and attacking the immune system by reducing viral loads to undetectable levels with almost no risk of transmission.
My wife is HIV negative. When we got married, I said, I don't want to have children. She keep on insisting. After 2 years, I do my viral load 3 times during those 2 times, and my viral load was undetectable. Then we have a baby. We have two kids, and they're all negative.
Since 2004, India has been providing free treatment to 1.5 million HIV-infected patients. Despite these initiatives, the epidemic is picking up again. According to a 2021 report by the Ministry of Health, there are over 2.4 million HIV-infected people in India, a figure which has been on the rise for the past 5 years and is underestimated by the government, according to this doctor. Many HIV tests carried out in private clinics are not included in the national count.
By law, you are supposed to report the number of cases, but then to report the number of cases, you need certain authorities to come visit you or certain authorities to get in touch with the clinic. There should be a regular auditing. Unfortunately, though, in the past couple of years, there hasn't been a proper follow-up at all.
And often the marginalized sections of society are left out of the ambit of the healthcare system. In West Delhi, this private ambulance offers screening.
No charges, no charges. Testing is all free. Anybody can take this blood test.
This 23-year-old
I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't know this story turned into a story about New Delhi, but we're going to go ahead and finish it.
man voluntarily came for test.
Are you doing it for the first time? The HIV test before?
I've only done blood tests and HIV tests for the first time.
Within seconds, the results came out.
Yo, they give him some fucking condoms too. Sick.
He's positive. The NGO aims to screen people at high...
Yo, look how this guy looked at him. There's the condoms right there. Love all.
He's positive.
Busted! 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 You fucking... busted.
The NGO aims to screen people at high risk of contracting HIV. Sex workers and their clients, drug users, or migrant workers coming from rural areas.
People don't want to go into their own hospitals nearby their homes to get HIV tested because of the big stigma. We actually have to go to the field and...
That was an HIV test? Oh. Ooh, that sucks. Very good that their drugs and drive the HIV virus at detectable levels. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, we're going to have to, this is the kind of, how long did that take with HIV? This is what we're going to have to do with COVID.
Do the HIV test. So this is service.
I understand they're completely different viruses, but there is a parallel there.
Their doorstep, I can say, or on the way back home or at the cruising sites.
The government aims to completely eradicate the HIV/AIDS epidemic by 2030, an ambitious plan that seems hard to achieve.
Japan is the only country among the G7 industrial nations that does.
Wow. And you know what? I was muted, and you know what I was making fun of? The fact that her microphone was really low, and I made a joke that France 24 should hire me, and I did all that while I was fucking muted. I'm that bad, folks.
Not legally recognized same-sex marriage. A court ruling was delivered recently, this time by the district court in the capital, Tokyo. While the judges stopped short of deeming the ban outright unconstitutional, they said that the lack of legal protection for same-sex families posed a serious threat.
Well, Reagan was partially responsible for the, connection of HIV, to homosexuality, and really set back the gay community a good, 2 decades of, of progress that they were trying to make and being accepted.
Threat to their personal dignity guaranteed by the Constitution. Catherine Clifford reports.
Applause outside Tokyo District Court for these plaintiffs. They demanded some 7,000 euros each in damages, saying Japan's current law, which defines marriage as the mutual consent of both sexes, discriminated against them by depriving them of the same economic and legal benefits that heterosexual couples enjoy through marriage.
People often don't realize just how conservative Japan is.
Their case was rejected.
That silly communist, animation that I showed you, some of the pillars that they were talking about, like that Japanese people deserve, was like $15 an hour minimum wage and like retirement programs. There's a lot of stuff actually just, because it's a very conservative government. So, it's got that apparently the up by your bootstraps mentality over there in Japan.
The court said the government's lack of legislative action is not illegal, but it also said Japan's lack of law to protect the rights of same-sex couples to marry and become families violates the constitution. The plaintiffs and their lawyers described the ruling as groundbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very special. It probably has something to do with the fact that they're an island.
Worried at first, but once I heard them say in the verdict that it's unconstitutional, I was relieved. The judges emphasized the traditional family values to some extent, but they also touched upon the trouble this poses to those who have same-sex partners.
Yo, how sick is her? Where are these in America? Japan over here with the innovations. Oh man, if you're wearing glasses, this is good. You see what it's doing? It's venting your breath, which would normally blast up here into your glasses. It's venting it this way. And it looks like, if I can see this correctly, it's behind the filter, which is unlike a lot of those American ones that have like a gasket on it with no filter. Some of them do. A lot of them don't have a filter. This is a filtered vent so that your breath isn't blasting up into your glasses. Man, Japan is amazing.
There was progress. Although the judiciary delegated to the lawmakers, I hope that they will actively consider same-sex marriage. We will continue our efforts.
The Tokyo ruling is seen as carrying weight because of the capital's influence on the rest of the country. The case was closely watched in a country still largely bound by traditional gender roles and family values. Though this is slowly changing, a 2021 survey showed 57% of the public was in favor of same-sex marriage. This
family values. Go ahead, tune in into some Japanese pornography and tell me what that society is up to when it comes to family value. Please.
This was the third of 5 similar lawsuits filed in 2019 around the country and followed 2 divisive verdicts
Japan's
in Japan.
Freaky, yo.
Hopes were raised by a ruling in the city of Sapporo in
Japan gets super
2021,
freaky.
declaring the ban on same-sex unions unconstitutional. But another decision in Osaka later upheld the ban. Japan is the only G7 nation that doesn't allow same-sex marriage.
They have a lot of family values. Get them. All right, well, there you go. There's my China news, I guess also Japan news. So there you go, YouTube. Hopefully you enjoyed that if the censors didn't catch it. So thank you so much.